Well, hey everyone, I have a very exciting video for you. We're going to be premiering an exclusive clip from a brand new movie that I am so excited about. And I'm not just excited about it because of the subject matter, which is the evidence for the existence of God and the truthfulness of Christianity, which I am particularly passionate about. But this is a documentary that I am featured in as well. And so I'm going to welcome the director, the founder, the creator, Michael Lewis, who this video, Michael, you've been on the show. Actually, we did a whole podcast episode a while back where you shared your story, you shared your heart behind this film. But for anybody who didn't see that and they're wondering, what is this movie all about? What is it all about? And why did you want to make this?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've been on the podcast, actually. It's taken me 3 years to make this film. But my main goal with the project is because I used to be an atheist, I want to be able to present the case for the existence of God through a film that's not yelling at you, a film that just kind of lays the evidence out for what it is and then leaves you on the table for you to make the conclusion, for you to make the decision. And so I have two goals with the film. The first goal is to reach the non-believer, to get people to take a second look at Christianity. And as Greg Koukl says, to just plant a stone in their shoe, get them something, get them thinking about a particular topic that may be compelling for them, for the existence of God. I cover a variety of different topics, but if I can just get people curious about the topic, then I can direct you to go and do the research yourself and to really dig deeper into this worldview and see why we think it's the best explanation for reality. But my second goal is for the believer, because when I first gave my life to Christ, I just assumed this was kind of the path that everybody took. They followed the evidence, they came to the conclusion that it was true, and then they gave their life to Jesus. But what I found out was that 90% of the Christians that I was interacting with, they weren't prepared to give a defense. And partly is because they were afraid they were going to get asked to difficult questions that they weren't able to answer. And partly it's because we don't want to be in those awkward conversations. But most people are just not prepared. They just don't have the evidences behind them. And so my hope is that this film will get them excited and get them to realize, like, what we believe, there's good reasons for it out there. There's good arguments out there. And the challenge is for them to also go do the research and dig into this and equip themselves and to be able to use this as an evangelistic tool so that when you're out there having conversations with people, if you have 5 minutes with them, they may not read a book, but maybe they'll watch a film. And so this is kind of a conversation starter for your friends and family as well.
And as people will see in just a moment, it's so beautifully shot. I mean, the lighting, the artistic way that you've brought in some of the B-roll is just breathtaking. But also, I got to premiere, or not premiere, but I got to see I've gotten to watch the movie already, and I was unprepared for how emotionally, it makes such an emotional connection. And I don't know if people are prepared for that. When you're talking about apologetics, you're talking about the evidence for Christianity. I don't think people are expecting to really realize through your artistic endeavor how deeply emotionally satisfying this all is as well. And so is evidence then what led you to Christianity out of atheism? Maybe just give us a thumbnail sketch of that, because I think it's such a fascinating story that you were basically convinced by the evidence and then came to saving faith.
I was. It was actually my wife that came home one day and she told me, she said, "I feel like Jesus is calling me back." Because she had grown up in the church, but she had been pulled away by friends, and then I, of course, pulled her away as well because I was a pretty staunch atheist. I was very much opposed to Christianity. But when she said that, I was like, all right. Well, I love her, so I'm going to go to church and see what this is all about. Well, she dragged me into a church, and I remember looking around, and I'm like, yeah, I get it. I mean, it gives people something to hope in. It's just not true. And so I figured all I have to do to stop going to church was to show her that it wasn't real, that none of this was real. Well, that started a 3-year journey of me just actually taking a second look at it. You see, because I based my entire belief system on slogans or phrases that I would hear, like "God can't exist if evil exists," "Evolution has disproven Christianity," uh, "Science and the Bible are not compatible." And I never really dug deeper to see what the evidence actually was for Christianity. And so what that did is that challenged me to take a second look at it and dive in deeper. And it's ironic because as an atheist, I always looked at Christians as being narrow-minded. But I realized that as an atheist, I was being narrow-minded because I wasn't
Wow.
willing to take a second look at it. And so whenever I really started to dive in, it was one thing after another. The evidence for fine-tuning was overwhelming. The evidence for the origins of the universe and the cause of the universe was overwhelming. And then when you start studying other worldviews, they just don't hold up. There's just something about Christianity that it answers every question in a compelling way, and it really is what I would say is the best explanation for the reality that we find ourselves in. It has the best explanatory power versus every worldview that's out there. Well, at the end of this 3 years, after I looked at all the evidence, um, I finally came to realize that it wasn't the evidence that was holding me back,
Mm.
but it was the fact that I didn't want it to be true. That's
Wow.
why it took me 3 years. Because at the end of the 3 years, I had virtually had every one of my questions answered. And then I started asking my wife questions about the Bible. And she said, she wasn't able to answer them. So she said, well, I have a theologian, a friend in the family that you could go and have a conversation with. So I remember I went to this guy's house, I had 5 pages full of questions. This is towards the end of the 3 years. And I went through each question. And one thing I remember is that he answered every question using scripture.
Hmm.
And then he just looked up at me and he says, so do you think that it's actually true? And at that point, I had no more objections. I said, yeah, I think so. But it wasn't that moment that it really started to sink in. It was actually the drive home. And on the way home, I remember it hit me. It was like, I actually think this is real.
Wow.
And that was when I realized it wasn't the evidence that was holding me back. It was the fact that I didn't want it to be true. So I thought to myself, well, that's not a good reason to not believe it and to not give my life to Christ. And so I said, all right, Jesus, what's next? And that started a journey after that. And since then, I've been adamant about helping equip people to be able to defend the faith, about sharing my beliefs with others, and being able to adequately defend the faith. And that's really what was the backbone behind making this film. Because before, as an atheist, I was making horror films.
Oh,
And
wow.
so when I went to my wife and I said, well, I can't do that anymore. What can I do? Because I didn't like Christian films. They weren't good to me. And she said, well, why don't you do a documentary based on the evidence that compelled you it was true? And so I said, all right. And so I just started sending emails out. And 3 years later, we have a movie.
I remember getting the email, and I think it was maybe Frank that had connected us,
Mm-hmm.
Frank Turek that had connected us, 'cause
Yeah.
Frank is in the documentary as well. And I think what you've accomplished is so beautiful because I think you as the atheist knew that there was this block and this, the intellectual questions are answered, but there's this surrender element that I think people resist when they aren't raised in the church and raised to believe these things. It's kind of like that's the barrier that I hear a lot of people describe. And I think what the movie does is so beautifully and artistically kind of tear down those barriers to make it not just here's why it's true, but here's why it's emotionally satisfying. This is why it's beautiful and the film is beautiful. And I think it's coming out at exactly the perfect time because it's out now. People are, looking for something to watch in the evening with their families. And this is the perfect movie to watch with. Just get the family together. And we're going to watch a quick clip from the movie. It's a 2-minute clip. And then after we watch the clip, we'll tell everybody all the places that they can go to watch the film. It's on all the streaming platforms, and it's really exciting. So I really want everyone, after you watch this clip, after you watch this video, please tell your friends about this movie because this is a movie that is for sure something that you could invite unbelievers to watch with you. It's not going to just, smack them in the head with a Bible. It's really smart. It's really beautiful. It's well done. It's good art as well as being well reasoned. And it's just a really good evangelistic tool, but it's also good for Christians to watch to shore up what we believe and to give us confidence in knowing that we have good reasons to believe what we do. And that's what I love about apologetics, Michael, is that it's it's for the unbeliever in that it presents that evidence, but it also gives Christians also that already believe that, gives them confidence. That's what I needed. I already believed. But when my faith was undermined by skepticism, I needed to know that there were good reasons for what I believe. So it's a multifaceted discipline, apologetics. And I think that you have done such a great job to combine apologetics and art. So let's watch this clip and then we'll tell everybody where they can watch the whole film. And here's the clip. I think one of the toughest questions to answer is not so much does God exist, because I think that's easier to answer than the question, is God good? I think a lot of people struggle with the goodness of God in light of some of the horrendous suffering we see, the evils that people inflict on one another.
Here's the reality. Every worldview has to give an explanation for evil. The question is not, can I tell you why God allowed every single act of evil? Because here's the deal, I can't. I don't know. The question is, which worldview offers the most logically and existentially compelling response to evil? That's why I'm a Christian. And a large measure is because of who the person of Jesus is. It's only within the Christian worldview that not only is God sovereign, not only is he directing the world towards good, and we use our suffering and the evil we experience for good, but it says God isn't distant. God didn't just send a book. God didn't just send a prophet or an angel. It's only within Christianity that says God steps down into our suffering, intimately understands our hurt and our pain. So when somebody's hurting and they say, where is God? Part of the answer is God is right there suffering with you.
The beautiful thing about God and even Christianity is that we do not deny the reality of suffering. But the beautiful thing is that we serve a God who has promised us in his word that he will be with us in the midst of our difficulties, in the midst of our suffering, in the midst of our pain, in the midst of our loss. We serve a God who is a personal God, and his presence is near to comfort us even in life's most difficult circumstances.
I've based my faith on evidence, and so I trust that he has morally sufficient reason to allow the type of suffering that he does. And I've seen it in my own life. I've been in situations where I could not fathom the purpose that he could possibly bring out of this particular situation. I couldn't fathom that there could be any point to the very sudden death of my nephew, who I loved very much. I did not see how there could be any point to that, how there could be any good or morally sufficient reason for that to happen. But in the weeks and months and even years that have followed that event, I've seen it. I've seen the goodness of God show up in such big ways. I've seen the effect as that's rippled out in the lives of others. I don't know the reason God allowed that, but I trust in him and I trust in his goodness. All right. Awesome. Awesome. So let everybody know where they can watch the movie, how they can access it, and any other things that you have kind of involved that you want to let people know about.
Okay. So it's going to be available on Amazon, Apple TV, Google, Fandango, and all the major platforms where you can rent and purchase movies. So pretty much any platform you're able to get on, you'll be able to go on there and rent the movie. In addition, I also have on my website a resource tab so that after you watch the movie, you can go and start to do your own research. I have all of the ministries for all of the scholars that are in the film are under that tab. And that's just a kind of a central source where you can go and just start looking into all of this and really spend the time to prepare yourself, or if you're not a believer, really spend the time to take a second look at this whole Christianity thing.
And what's that website? Can you give us that URL?
Absolutely. It's universedesigned.com.
Universedesigned.com. So the film is called Universe Designed,
Mhm.
and it's available on all the platforms. I just really want to encourage absolutely everybody, go to the website, look at the resource tab, rent the movie, watch it with your small group, get a bunch of people together, have a little holiday get together, a little Christmas party, and watch the film and discuss, because I think, as you could see from that clip, it's beautifully done, and it's going to present the best evidence in the most compelling way from some really great people. Anything else you want to share, Michael?
The last thing is I do also want to mention I'm going to have a tab on there soon so that if you want to screen it in churches, I'm going to offer that
Awesome.
ability as well. So that if you're able to talk to your pastor and you guys want to do a screening, I'll have a tab on there for you to be able to reach out to us to be able to do that as well. And then again, I would just encourage everyone out there uh, to be ready to give that defense. Be out there talking to people, even if you don't know the answers to all these questions. At least you can start the conversation. And if you don't know the answer, don't try to force it or try to assume that you do. Just say, I don't know, and then go and do the research and prepare yourself.
That's great advice. All right. Universe Designed is the name of the film. Michael Lewis. You can go to universedesigned.com to get all of that information. And thanks for joining, Michael.
Thank you.